Traha Global is now nearing their 1-year anniversary. It's an open world free-to-play MMORPG cross-platform for PC and mobile, and I went to check out how the game is doing after a year. Has it gotten better? How's the player base? Is it worth checking out or not? So let's jump right into it. So I played probably 500 plus hours of Traha Global. The game was very good when it first came out, but it ran into some issues very quickly and I quit some months later. But today I want to check out how the game is doing. I talked to some players, I did some research, and it doesn't look too good for Traha Global. Now, when it first came out, the game was promised to be a no pay to win at all, and it was for a very short while, probably like a month, until the pay to win started to get more and more. They made this promise, but they couldn't keep up with the promise. Now, Traha Global had a different Eastern game launch before, but they launched a same game but very different to the Western release. So they made some changes to the pay to win, so it wouldn't be pay to win, and a lot of other stuff that we're going to be talking about, and they stayed true to that as much as they could. But when they saw they were losing player base, they increased the pay to win of the game, which led to, as you guys know, you increase pay to win, it leads to population decrease. Now, the game overall was good. The combat felt very good. You could move while attacking. There was a lot of different skill talents, which was amazing. You could add healer, you could have tank, you could have DPS, you could have different weapons to build whenever you want. There was no like class lock. You can change your weapon whenever you could. There was full character customization. You could dye your gear. There were mounts. A lot of the gameplay was good, and the cool thing that was really the Traha selling point was the massive PvP versus PvP battles, like guild sieges, faction wars, massive PvP fights. They had arenas, and they had PvE, like massive raids, 10-player raids and stuff where you need a healer, tanks, and DPSs. Now, they had all this, so where did it go wrong? Now, the thought of Traha Global, like idea of it, the game itself was phenomenal, but the devs and the team just made some terrible choices. First of all is the pay to win. Second of all is, what is Traha's main point? It's going to be a PvP MMO, faction versus faction, and guess what? There was never any faction balance in any of the servers. There was no way they weren't able to balance the factions. They tried to release this faction balancing update where people could switch factions. Didn't work. The factions were still unbalanced until this day. They're still unbalanced. They had like buffs they were giving during the guild sieges and guild territories. I remember playing for a faction. We were strong at the start, and then we got very weak, and we had lost like 20 or 30 times in a row, and the developers and the team weren't doing anything. Imagine playing for a faction and you lose 20-30 times in a row for weeks and months. Do you still want to play the game? No, you don't really want to play the game, because you play the game for the massive PvP fights and they're not even fair. So that was like the main thing that was really bad. The second thing was the pay to win, right? You start off low, then it became more and more pay to win over time. Every update, the whales could get stronger and stronger, and they were supposed to have like a CP scaling in PvP that didn't work at all. Basically, how it worked was the low players, the bad players with weak gear, would get their CP scaled to a certain CP, which would be, let's say, 100,000, and the whales would have like CP of 150,000, and you couldn't, if you were in that bunch, if you had like 110,000 CP, you had 198,000 CP, you'd be scaled to 100,000. It would be giving random stats, so it would basically be even weaker, while the whales could do whatever they want. So they could just go in PvP and one-shot everyone. And they still haven't fixed CP scaling to this day. I was in their Discord and I saw people talking about CP scaling still. They still haven't fixed it. It's a year. That's been a year. That's wild to me. So CP scaling issues, faction issues, right? And pay to win, lead to player leaving the game. And then there was the PvE. They finally introduced a raid, and the raid was actually difficult, but they nerfed it a week, not even a week after a launch. You know why they nerfed it? Why it was so difficult? Because every time they imported stuff from the Eastern release to the Western release, they forgot that this is not the same game. The CP is not the same. So for example, because in the Eastern game you could pay to win a lot more, you could get way more gear and stuff. When they reached that raid, they were super over geared, so they would clean it really easily. And they imported the same raid to us. We didn't have that gear, we didn't have that CP, so it was extra hard for us, which made it fun. But they were like, they realized that, and then they made the raid super easy. And every raid after that they released, raids, 10-player raids, were super easy. So there was no challenge in doing the PvE content, and the PvP content is absolutely horrendous with the balancing. So you couldn't do PvP arenas, you couldn't do faction and enjoy PvP. Like even for the winner side, let's say you're winning 20 times in a row in guild territory wars or guild sieges, do you want to keep playing the game? No, because there's no competition. The losers in these battles do not want to play because they keep losing, they're not getting any rewards, and the winners, they get bored, right? There's no like competition, and the PvE is super simple. So there's a lot of these choices that they did that was terrible for the game. And then they try to, after a long time, we kept asking for a long time, make it easier for players to come back to the game, make it easier for beginner players, and they started giving new players like a boost. But it still wasn't enough to catch up, because what they did is they introduced these legendary mounts they could only get through pay to win, basically battle pass. And if you didn't get them through the battle pass, you could never get them again. That was it. So people that didn't spend money on the game could never get these legendary mounts. And these legendary mounts gave players like crazy damage and defense boost. It was ridiculous how much they boosted players. And you had to get these mounts if you want to compete at all, and you couldn't get them anywhere else except pay to win battle pass. I don't know if they introduced a way to get them now, but for like 7 months into the game you couldn't get them any other way. So they just made every battle pass, they introduced a legendary mount, and the pay to win players just became, the whales just became super strong, and they could like start soloing like 20 players alone. It was ridiculous. So they made a promise about not being pay to win at all, and what ended up happening, it became super pay to win. So now taking a look at the Steam charts of the game, now this is just numbers that these are just numbers that show the Steam numbers, not the mobile numbers, but they can kind of see where the game is heading, right? So in November last year, the game came out in October, so November was the first like recorded player base, and we had like a peak of 7.5k PC players, and probably like I would say like the mobile numbers are probably double. This is just like a guess, I wouldn't know 100%. So let's say they had peak of 7k PC players, and then mobile players total was, so they had like 25,000. Let's say 25,000 is good, okay? Maybe total 25,000 peak players, and average players would be, let's say 6,000 average players in November. Okay, still a decent number for this game, but look at the big decrease. 50% is normal for most games. After the first month, half of the player base quits. This is fine. Okay, 1,000 players, let's say average players like 3,000-4,000 if you include mobile, probably even 5,000 if you include mobile. Peak players were probably up to like 10,000. Very good. And then just look at the dips. This is where you see December to January, 40% decrease, then 25, then look at now. They have an average of 150 players, not even that. Okay, peak players 244, which is not even enough to fill like one server, like one faction PvP, because faction PvP is 200 versus 200. Can't even fill one server with a PvP. Ridiculous. So right now they had a recent update in August, and they lost players. They didn't even gain anything. They didn't even keep their chart. They lost players during updates. So overall, Traha Global definitely doing very terrible. It's very unfortunate because the idea of the game was phenomenal, you know, and their promise of no pay to win, you know, it was not believable at all. But they could have done so much better with the game, like the gameplay and the combat, the world. A lot of the stuff with the game was fun. That's why I have 500 hours in this game, plus. Okay, I was competing in the PvPs, I was trying my best, but I just couldn't keep up with the whales. The pay to win becomes so much, the game became super boring. There's nothing, even though you build like strategy in the guild sieges or the guild territory, nothing to say, because the factions were so unbalanced. You would fight like 50 versus 100 in the factions. You would fight, it was just a terrible experience. And it seems like most of the players that stayed with the game, I've talked to them and they're saying like, yeah, Traha is coming closer and closer to the end. Like, they're just playing it because they have nothing else to play, but the second they get something else to play, like, it's done. Like, I see Traha Global, if they're lucky, they might last out this year, but they're most likely gonna shut down by next year. Because again, we talked about this to the community managers too. Community managers were amazing. They tried their best to like give the feedback from the community, but the community managers, we told them several times, you need to promote the game on social media, Facebook, whatever. Promote the game. They didn't do any promotion. You can see clearly in the numbers. So if they're not gonna do any promoting, they're not gonna fix their game, they're just gonna make it super pay to win. There's no way this game survives. No matter what update they come up with, if they don't do these things, the game will most likely die. So I do see Traha probably shutting down early next year. I'll be very surprised if they don't. Very sad. It was a great game, but only lasted 1 year. That is the reality of the market on mobile and PC MMO market today. If you make a pay to win game and you do not make good changes or take feedback from your community, the game will die. It's just a reality. Like, every game that is super pay to win dies. Like, come on, you know, like how more results, how many more games do you need to see have the same conclusion? Like, learn from it. There's a reason why pay to win MMOs do not survive in the market, because people do not want a pay to win MMO. You can satisfy the whales, but the whales will only play and spend so much on your game. Once they play and they end up, you know, satisfying their hunger, they will jump on to the next game and pay to win there. Okay, and then you have nothing. You don't have any community left. They all left. You only stayed with the whales and they weren't able to save your game. But that is it for Traha Global. Let me know what you guys think about Traha Global. You guys be checking out. Check out this video right here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.